My dad passed away and his secret diary revealed I had a sister. When I tried to build a relationship with her, our grandparents threatened to cut me off. Need advice. My dad passed away 3 months ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 52 and it came as a complete shock to everyone. I'm his only son, 23 male, and since his death, I've been trying to handle everything on my own. Last weekend, I was finally ready to go through his study and pack up his things. While sorting through his books, I found an old leather-bound diary hidden behind some medical textbooks. Initially, I wasn't sure if I should read it, it felt like invading his privacy. But I really missed him and wanted to feel close to him somehow, so I decided to read just a few pages. What I found completely turned my world upside down. The diary started from about 20 years ago. My dad wrote about how he had been having problems in his marriage with my mom because she was away for several months taking care of my grandmother, her mom, who had gotten into a serious accident. During that time, he grew close to Lori, my mom's best friend who lived nearby and would often check on him. One thing led to another and they had a brief affair. Dad wrote about how guilty he felt and how he ended things as soon as he realized what a huge mistake he was making. But then Lori found out she was pregnant. She wanted to keep the baby and didn't want to tell my mom about the affair. Dad agreed to support her financially but wanted to keep everything secret to protect our family. Lori died during childbirth. She had some complications and didn't make it. The baby, a girl named Rebecca, survived and was taken in by Lori's sister Sam. According to the diary, Dad set up a trust fund for Rebecca and had been secretly supporting her education and living expenses all these years. I had to stop reading several times because it was just too much to process. I'm an only child, or at least I thought I was. Now I suddenly had a sister I never knew about. Dad's diary entries showed how much he cared about Rebecca. He wrote about watching her grow up from a distance, attending her school events without her knowing who he was, and how proud he was of her achievements. After sitting with this information for a few days, I decided I needed to find Rebecca. Dad's diary had Sam's address, and through some social media searching, I found out Rebecca was now 19 and attending the local university. I drove by their house a few times and saw her coming home from college. The similarity to our dad was striking. She had his eyes and smile. I knew I couldn't just walk up and tell her I was her brother. That would be too shocking. So I came up with what might seem like a crazy plan. I rented the house next door to theirs when I saw it was available. I work in IT and can work remotely, so relocating wasn't an issue. I know this might sound stalkerish, but I just wanted to learn more about her before dropping this huge bomb on her life. For the first few weeks, I just observed from a distance. That's when I noticed something concerning. These 3 guys from her college would often follow her home, making inappropriate comments and clearly making her uncomfortable. At first, I thought maybe they were just classmates, but then I overheard them threatening her. They had somehow gotten hold of some private photos of her and were threatening to share them if she didn't agree to go out with one of them. Seeing my sister being harassed like this made my blood boil. I couldn't stand by and watch anymore. The next day, when those guys showed up again, I confronted them. I told them I was her brother, though I didn't specify half-brother, and that if they ever bothered her again, they'd have to deal with me and the police. They tried to act tough at first, but backed off when I showed them I had recorded their threats and had evidence of their harassment. Rebecca witnessed this whole confrontation. She was obviously confused about why a stranger was claiming to be her brother and defending her. After the guys left, I invited her over to my place. I knew this wasn't how I had planned to tell her, but the situation forced my hand. I showed her dad's diary and explained everything. She broke down crying while reading the diary entries. Through her tears, she told me she had always known she was adopted by her aunt after her mom died, but she had never known who her father was. Sam had only told her that her father was someone who couldn't be part of her life but who cared about her and made sure she was taken care of. We spent hours talking that day. She told me about growing up feeling different from everyone else, wondering about her real family, and how she had always wished for siblings. Finding out she had a brother seemed to fill a void she had carried her whole life. After a few days of getting to know Rebecca, I decided to tell our grandfather, Dad's father, about her. I thought he had a right to know about his granddaughter, and I hoped he would welcome her into the family. His reaction completely blindsided me. He became furious, yelling about how Dad had disgraced the family name and that he would never accept a child born from an affair. I tried explaining that Rebecca was innocent in all this, that she was his granddaughter regardless of how she came into this world. But he wouldn't listen. He even threatened to cut me off financially. He helps with my student loans, if I continued any relationship with her. I got really angry and told him I didn't care about his money or his outdated views about family honor. That's where things stand now. Rebecca and I have been getting closer, and she's really happy to have a brother in her life. We've been hanging out almost every day, and I've been helping her deal with college stress while she helps me cope with Dad's death. I'm trying to get my grandmother to help convince grandfather to accept Rebecca, but so far she's been very non-committal. I know moving next door to Rebecca might seem extreme or even creepy to some people. But I really felt it was the best way to get to know her before revealing such life-changing information. And given that I was able to help her with those bullies, I feel like it was the right decision. Am I wrong for pursuing a relationship with my sister despite our grandfather's opposition? Should I have just left things alone after finding the diary? I'd really appreciate any advice on how to handle this situation, especially with our grandfather. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and offered support. Your messages helped me realize I wasn't wrong in wanting to know my sister. A lot has happened since then, and none of it is good. Yesterday started normally. I was working from home when my grandmother showed up unannounced at my door around noon. I was actually happy to see her because I thought she had finally decided to help convince grandfather to accept Rebecca. I couldn't have been more wrong. She sat down and started talking about how worried she was about me. I thought she meant about Dad's death, but then she dropped a bomb that changed everything. She and grandfather had known about Rebecca all along. They knew about Dad's affair with Lori and the pregnancy. Not only that, but they were the ones who forced Dad to keep it all a secret. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All these years, they had a granddaughter they never acknowledged. When I asked why they pretended not to know about Rebecca when I told them, grandmother's response made me sick. She said they were worried Rebecca would try to claim a portion of Dad's estate now that he was gone. I told her that was ridiculous because Dad had already set up a trust fund for Rebecca years ago. She didn't need or want any more money. But grandmother wasn't done. She started saying that having Rebecca in our lives would bring shame to the family. She even suggested that finding out about Dad's affair might have contributed to my mom's depression before she died of cancer when I was 15. That made me furious because mom's depression started after her cancer diagnosis, not before. Grandmother was trying to use my mom's death to manipulate me. When I pointed this out, she changed tactics and said that Rebecca's existence would taint mom's memory in everyone's minds. The conversation got even worse when grandmother revealed that back when Lori got pregnant, she and grandfather had offered her money to move away and never contact Dad again. Lori had refused, saying her baby deserved to know their father. After Lori died in childbirth, they tried to convince her sister Sam to move away with baby Rebecca, but she also refused. Then grandmother told me something that really showed how calculating they had been. They had agreed to Dad supporting Rebecca financially only if he signed a legal agreement never to acknowledge her publicly as his daughter. That's why there was nothing about Rebecca in his will. They had made sure of it years ago. I was struggling to process all this when grandmother made her final threat. She said if I didn't end my relationship with Rebecca, she would tell everyone in our extended family that I was betraying my mother's memory by embracing her best friend's daughter. She even implied she would spread rumors that maybe I had romantic feelings for Rebecca since we didn't grow up as siblings. That's when I lost it. I told her that she and grandfather were the real betrayers. They had denied their own granddaughter for 19 years, forced their son to live with guilt and shame, and were now trying to manipulate me with threats and lies. I told her to get out of my house and never come back. After she left, I was shaking with anger. I called Rebecca and asked her to come over. I felt she needed to know the truth about our grandparents. When she arrived and I told her everything, she was hurt but not as surprised as I expected. She revealed that her Aunt Sam had always been vague about why our father couldn't acknowledge her publicly. Apparently, Sam would sometimes mutter about those controlling people when she thought Rebecca couldn't hear. Now Rebecca knew who those people were. We spent hours talking about everything. Rebecca showed me old birthday cards she had received over the years, signed only from someone who loves you. She had kept every one of them, hoping they were from her father. Now we knew they probably were. She also told me something that broke my heart. Every year on her birthday, she would see an older couple watching her from their car parked down the street. They never approached, just watched for a while and left. She now realizes those must have been our grandparents, coming to see her but never acknowledging her. While we were talking, grandfather called. He said he wanted to meet both of us tomorrow at his house. He claimed he had thought about everything and wanted to make things right. Rebecca wants to go. She says she at least wants to hear what he has to say. I'm extremely suspicious of this sudden change of heart, especially coming right after grandmother's visit and threats. I don't trust them at all anymore, but Rebecca made a good point. She said she spent her whole life wondering about her father's family, and now she at least wants to look our grandparents in the eye and ask why they rejected her. I agreed to go with her, but I warned her to be prepared for more disappointment. I'd really appreciate any advice about handling tomorrow's meeting. Part of me wants to tell grandfather exactly what I think of him, but I don't want to make things harder for Rebecca. She's been amazingly strong through all this, and I don't want to add to her pain. Update 2. The meeting with grandfather turned out to be a complete nightmare. When Rebecca and I arrived at his house yesterday afternoon, we immediately knew something was wrong. There were too many cars parked outside. Grandfather hadn't just invited us, he had gathered the entire extended family. As soon as we walked in, I saw all our aunts, uncles, and cousins sitting in the living room. Some faces I hadn't seen in years. Rebecca grabbed my hand nervously, and I could feel her trembling. Before I could suggest we leave, grandfather walked in and dropped his bomb. He stood in front of everyone and introduced Rebecca as the result of my son's biggest mistake. He then proceeded to tell everyone about Dad's affair with Lori, but he twisted the story to make Dad sound like he was Lori's victim. He claimed she had seduced Dad during a vulnerable time and trapped him by getting pregnant. I was already furious, but then he started talking about how I was trying to force this illegitimate child into the family. He even suggested that Rebecca was only interested in us now because she wanted Dad's money. The way he spoke about her, like she wasn't even in the room, made me very angry. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and told everyone the truth. I revealed how grandfather and grandmother had known about Rebecca all along but chose to pretend she didn't exist. I told them about the legal agreement they forced Dad to sign, denying Rebecca her rightful place in the family. I explained how they had tried to pay Lori to disappear, and how they had been secretly watching Rebecca grow up without ever acknowledging her. The room erupted in chaos. Some family members were shocked, others started arguing. My cousin Alice started crying, saying she had played with Rebecca in school years ago and had no idea they were related. Then something unexpected happened. My Aunt Linda, Dad's younger sister, stood up. She looked pale but determined. She said she had a confession to make. She had also known about Rebecca because Dad had confided in her years ago. She couldn't bear to see her niece grow up without any family connection, so she had been secretly visiting Rebecca over the years, posing as a family friend. Rebecca gasped at this. She turned to Aunt Linda and said, "You're the lady who used to bring me books?" Apparently, Aunt Linda had been visiting Rebecca's high school library where she often studied, bringing her favorite books and chatting with her. She had never revealed who she really was, but had tried to be a supportive presence in Rebecca's life. This revelation caused absolute chaos. Grandfather started shouting at Aunt Linda, calling her a traitor to the family. Grandmother, who had been quiet until then, started crying and saying everything was falling apart. Several cousins were arguing about whether Aunt Linda had done the right thing. In the middle of all this drama, I noticed Rebecca had disappeared. I found her sitting in my car, tears streaming down her face. She looked completely overwhelmed. She told me she had always dreamed of having a big family, but not like this. She suggested maybe it would be better if we stopped seeing each other, saying she didn't want to be the reason for all this family conflict. I refused to accept that. I told her that she was my sister, and I wasn't going to let anyone take her away from me again. She had done nothing wrong, all this drama was because of our grandparents' lies and manipulation. When we got home, Aunt Linda called. She apologized for not telling us sooner about her involvement. She explained that Dad had told her about Rebecca shortly after Lori died. She had wanted to acknowledge Rebecca openly, but Dad had begged her not to, fearing our grandparents would cut him off completely and he wouldn't be able to support Rebecca financially. She also revealed something else. She had years of photos of Rebecca growing up, taken during her secret visits. She offered to share them with us. Rebecca started crying again, but this time with happiness. She had very few photos from her childhood, and the thought of having more meant a lot to her. We're meeting Aunt Linda tomorrow to look at the photos. Rebecca is both excited and nervous. As for our grandparents, they've been calling non-stop, but we're not answering. Several family members have reached out, some supportive, others critical. I don't know what happens next, but I know one thing for sure, I'm done letting our grandparents control this narrative. Rebecca is my sister, and no amount of family drama is going to change that. Update 3. It's been 3 months since the dramatic family meeting that blew everything apart. A lot has changed since then. Rebecca and I have grown much closer, while our relationship with most of the family has become complicated. Aunt Linda now visits us openly, which has caused a huge rift between her and our grandparents. They haven't spoken to her since she revealed her secret connection to Rebecca. Last week, something happened that changed everything again. Rebecca and I were going through more of Dad's old papers, trying to organize everything. In an old briefcase tucked away in his closet, we found a bundle of letters from our mom to Dad, dated just weeks before her death. What we read in those letters shook us to our core. Mom had known about Rebecca all along. She had discovered the truth about Dad's affair and Rebecca's existence about a year after Lori died. But instead of confronting Dad, she had kept quiet and watched him struggle with his guilt. In her letters, she wrote about how she had forgiven him years ago and had actually wanted to reach out to Rebecca. The most heartbreaking part was learning that Mom had planned to tell me about Rebecca after I turned 18. She wrote about how she had watched Rebecca grow up from a distance, just like Dad had. She had even attended some of Rebecca's school events, standing in the back, too afraid to approach because of our grandparents' threats. Mom's cancer diagnosis changed everything. She wrote that she regretted not standing up to our grandparents sooner. She had wanted to meet Rebecca properly before she died, to tell her that she didn't blame her for anything and that she would have loved to be part of her life. But her illness progressed too quickly, and she never got the chance. Reading these letters brought both peace and immense pain. Peace knowing that Mom hadn't died feeling betrayed by Dad, but pain realizing how many opportunities for family bonding were lost because of our grandparents' interference. Rebecca cried for hours after reading the letters, saying she had always worried that Dad's wife had hated her. We shared the letters with Aunt Linda, who confirmed everything. She told us that Mom had confided in her about knowing the truth, but had sworn her to secrecy. Aunt Linda said she had always struggled with keeping so many secrets, but had done it to protect both Rebecca and our parents. Last week, Grandfather tried to reach out again. He sent a message through one of our cousins saying he wanted to make amends. But when we read his actual message, it was clear he still saw Rebecca as a problem to be managed rather than a grandchild to be loved. He offered to help Rebecca financially if we would agree to keep the whole story private and not damage the family's reputation any further. We didn't even bother responding to that. Rebecca said she'd rather have no grandparents than ones who saw her as a shameful secret to be bought off. I've never been prouder of her strength and dignity. These past months have taught us a lot about family. The people who should have protected and loved Rebecca chose to reject her, while the ones we least expected, like Aunt Linda and our mom, had loved her from afar all along. Rebecca officially moved in with me last week. It just made sense since she was always at my place anyway. Aunt Linda has become like a second mother to both of us, helping us deal with all this emotional turmoil. She's been sharing stories about Dad and Mom that we never knew, helping us understand them better. We're learning to be a family on our own terms now. It's not the family either of us imagined having, but it's real and honest, and that's what matters most. Update 4. It's been 6 months since everything started, and I felt I should give one final update. Rebecca and I have fully settled into living together. What started as a crazy plan to move next door to my unknown sister has turned into the best decision I ever made. We've created our own little family unit, and it works better than I could have imagined. The extended family has split into 2 distinct camps. Some, like Aunt Linda and a few cousins, have fully embraced Rebecca and regularly spend time with us. Others, led by our grandparents, maintain that we're disrespecting Dad's memory and destroying the family's reputation. We've learned to live with this divide. Last month, things came to a head when Grandfather had a heart attack and was hospitalized. Grandmother called us, saying he was asking for both of us. We went to the hospital, hoping maybe the health scare had changed his perspective. It hadn't. He tried to use his condition to guilt us into agreeing to his terms. He said he'd accept Rebecca if we agreed to never publicly acknowledge her as Dad's daughter and if she signed away any future claims to family assets. Rebecca didn't even let him finish speaking. She told him she didn't want his money or his conditional acceptance, and walked out. I followed her, and we haven't looked back. Some family members criticized us for being harsh, saying we should have shown more compassion given his condition. But we're done letting him manipulate us with guilt. His health scare wasn't an excuse to continue treating Rebecca like a dirty secret. The good news is that we're doing great on our own. Rebecca is excelling in college, and I got promoted at work. We've started new traditions, like Sunday dinners with Aunt Linda and movie nights with the cousins who support us. Last week, we scattered some of Dad's ashes at Lori's grave, something we felt he would have wanted. We've also made a big decision: we're moving to a different city next year. I can transfer within my company, and Rebecca has been accepted into a great university there for her graduate studies. Aunt Linda is actually planning to move too, saying she needs a fresh start away from all the family drama. The most surprising development has been finding support from Lori's side of the family. Her sister Sam, who raised Rebecca, has become close with Aunt Linda. They've been sharing stories about Lori, helping Rebecca learn more about her birth mother. It's created this beautiful blended family that none of us expected to have. Grandmother still sends occasional messages through relatives, usually about how we're breaking her heart and destroying the family. We've stopped responding. As Aunt Linda says, we're not destroying the family, we're building a new one based on love and acceptance rather than secrets and shame. To everyone who supported us through this journey, thank you. Your advice helped us stay strong when we doubted ourselves. We've learned that sometimes the best family is the one you choose, and that's okay. We're at peace with our decisions now. Rebecca has the family she always wanted, just not in the way she expected. I have a sister I never knew I needed. Sometimes the best things in life come from the hardest situations. This is the last update I'll post. We're ready to close this chapter and start our new life. For anyone going through similar family drama, stay true to yourself. Don't let others define your relationships or your worth. Real family accepts you as you are, without conditions or shame.